Hello to all of our phenomenal viewers, listeners, and supporters. I am your host, Podcast Bree, and I am so excited to be here. If you're a new audience member, we are so grateful to have you. Welcome to another episode of Connected, where we discuss all things mental health, recovery, employment, and stories. Before we dive in, this episode is sponsored by Contra Casa Behavioral Health Services and John Muir. On our next 6 episodes, Connected will be focused on the BIPOC community, sharing personal anecdotes, facts, and awareness from specialists around the Bay Area. Today's guest is Vickie Chang, a Chinese-American psychologist who offers a different outlook on mental health. With teachings from Western, Eastern, and Indigenous practices, Vickie encompasses all things health stemming from Earth itself. As climate change becomes more inevitable, Vickie believes we truly cannot heal ourselves unless we heal and tend to Mother Nature herself. Her expertise is in spirituality, climate anxiety, racial identities, and so much more. Today, Vickie will give us a better insight on what it truly means to tap into ourselves and make change. So welcome, Vickie.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
And before we start this episode, we are at a park, everyone, and we are gonna have the natural elements, so try to stay with us. But Vickie wanted to kind of give us her insight to how she does her practices. And so we have a special guest, Trent, which is a member, and John, which is staff, and she's gonna help us through a guided meditation. We're gonna have a little discussion around that, and then we're gonna go into our conversation. Does that sound good to you guys? Sounds good. Okay, thank you, Vickie, so much.
Fantastic. So I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit more. My Chinese name is Zhang Yarong, and my parents were born in China. They fled to Taiwan before the communists took over and then immigrated to the US. And my sisters and I were born in San Francisco. Yeah, and it just helps me to name my ancestral heritage because it puts me in a community of belonging, that I'm not here without my ancestors, and I'm not here without, I think of my teacher, my mother, my greatest support as Dadi Muqing, the great Earth Mother. And just want to acknowledge Guanyin Pusa, Kuan Yin, the spirits and the other deities, including Shiva, everything that allows this configuration of people to be here today. It always feels like an honor and a miracle to be together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I also want to name that we're recording this episode on unceded Ohlone territory. Yeah. So I'm gonna offer a short guided meditation and then an indigenous practice. And I welcome you to try it on with me however much you feel comfortable. So it helps to sit up straight. And if you want, you can close your eyes or just find a spot to gaze at. And just starting by taking some deep breaths, breathing from the feet all the way to the top of the head and back out again. And just extending the exhale as long as possible, doing that a few more times. And then at the end of the next exhale, allowing the breath to return to its natural rhythm. And just noticing what we're feeling in this moment. We can open our awareness to the sounds around us. Just hearing the creek. Maybe feeling the sun and the wind on our skin. And just noticing any thoughts and feelings inside, any sensations in the body. And just seeing if we can welcome everything that's here with this real attitude of kindness, of curiosity, just like we might have for a child in our life or an animal. Yeah, just seeing if we can allow it to be okay just in this moment. And when you're ready, we're gonna bring our attention to the feet. And just imagine that we're growing roots down into the earth, just like a tree. And we're growing them down all the different layers of dirt and rock and sediment and water and compost, just with the real persistence of life, just like a plant grows. And we're growing those roots all the way down to the very center of the earth. And then allowing that earth energy to flow back up our roots, all the way back up to our feet, and just filling in our feet, our legs, the entire pelvic area, and up the torso, the arms and the hands, all the way up to the head. And just taking a deep breath with this earth energy. Noticing how that feels in the body. And when you're ready, we're gonna open the top of the head to everything above us, to the sky, to the sun and the moon, the stars, the clouds, and just allow this light, this radiance to flow down the body like a waterfall. And just allowing it to pour down the head, the neck, the torso and arms and hands, the pelvic area and legs, all the way down to the feet. And just taking a deep breath with the sky energy. And just giving ourselves permission to let go of anything we don't need in this moment. Any old ideas or thoughts. Any feelings we want to put down. Anything that doesn't belong to us. Just allowing the energy of the sky and the energy of the earth to mix in the body. And as you listen today in our time together, just seeing if you can stay with the body, just stay home. Stay home in this piece of earth that we're gifted with in this lifetime. And if it feels good, you can place a hand on the belly or the heart, and yeah, just connecting to ourselves with some real tenderness. Like we're saying, it's okay, sweetie, I'm here. It's okay, honey. I'm here with you no matter what. When you're ready, moving the fingers and toes and opening the eyes. Yeah, and even though you might be looking around or at some point talking or still listening, just continuing to keep most of your attention kind of here home in the body. Like 60-70% of your attention with yourself. And just notice what it's like to do that, to stay home in yourself while being in the world. Yeah, so I wanted to offer this earth practice. I learned it from one of my teachers, Dr. Eduardo Duran, who is a psychologist. He wrote Healing the Soul Wound and other books. He's worked with veterans and indigenous populations, other populations. He's part Hikari Apache. And this is, he described to me, an ancient indigenous practice, but he was the person I learned it from. So I'm going to invite you to move from this table and to go out into nature and pick some part of nature that appeals to you. It could be a tree, it could be a leaf, it could be the water, it could be an insect. And I want you to introduce yourself to this living being And you not only give this being your name, but name your ancestors as far back as you know them. Name the land that you come from, name the culture. And then the practice is really about listening, about asking this being, whether it's the water or a bird or a tree, tell me about yourself. And asking humbly to be a student, to learn from this being. And another piece of it is to offer it a gift. And the gift could be your attention, the gift could be a piece of hair, the gift could be a flower. But offered often when we begin like a student-teacher relationship in my Chinese lineage, there's an offering of a thank you for this opportunity to learn. So curious how that was for you guys.
It was great. I actually have a little symbol here with me today. This is a twig to symbolize Twiggy because I remember growing up in America, we were very influenced by British and Irish standards of beauty. And I think that was even true for like boys growing up. Like you were supposed to be like an Abercrombie model or things like that, Calvin Klein, whatever. So the funny thing about that also is that like I, don't really meet those standards of beauty because I basically like am, of primarily Nigerian descent. Like I'm not an immigrant to the United States, but I have done my DNA testing and I'm actually from the Igbo people of Nigeria in the southeastern region, and we don't look like Twiggy or, the British or Irish Anglo-American standard. So the fact that like even my name is anglicized is a testament to the fact that like my ancestors aren't really like to this day even in touch with what it means to be Igbo or Nigerian even. So the fact that I had to do an entire DNA test to prove that to myself is kind of like I've been estranged from my own familial line. It's very strange. But other people have had similar experiences, so I don't feel alone in that. But I just think that, everyone is different. And so I hope that answers your question.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of
So
sense.
this is
For
my
sure.
Twiggy twig.
Yeah.
Everyone's supposed to be Twiggy in America, but I guess only some of us can be that person.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I can absolutely relate to that as well, because us being Black Americans, if you identify as Black, our lineage can be so short just due to systematic things and slavery and just like all these other factors that played into American history. And so I was like, when she told us to name our ancestors, I was like, okay, well, it's my dad's mom, but that's where it stops for me. I don't know who my grandpa is or anybody prior to that. And then on my mom's side of the family, I can name some people, but it stops because, things happen. So I was just talking to my mom at the water. That was all. John.
Yeah.
So I just see that tree right there, the one with 3 trunks.
Yeah.
Something attracted me about that tree. As I was telling Bria on the ride over here, I'm a Buddhist and have been for many years. And I guess I didn't really think of my ancestry, but I kind of thought of like some Buddhist stories and traditions when I was standing next to the tree. And I couldn't help, you talked about giving a gift, and I thought my gratitude, because in the story of the Buddha, there's a couple stories where trees figure very prominently, especially when the night he achieved his enlightenment. And so I just felt this gratitude, but it also made me realize, as you were talking about your ancestry, that I don't know a whole lot about my ancestry, and it would be worthwhile to look into it. I go maybe go as far back as my grandparents. I know a little more than that, but not much. But that's about it. And also I just I couldn't help but think that this was a compassionate tree, because if you looked at the tree, people had carved letters and all this, and I thought to myself, here's this tree, despite people abusing it, it still gives us shade and still protects us. And so that was the gratitude once again, just kind of coming forth. So, yeah.
It was a great start. It was a really great start. Vickie, what did you get?
You know, I'm just feeling like so much of what people talked about is my view of healing. Yeah, I went to the water, and you know, I feel like I've been a student of the water for a long time, and was just feeling that, you know, like Octavia Butler says something like change is God, that everything is always changing. And how terrifying that is for me and for us as humans, because we don't have control. But kind of the importance of setting my compass towards growth, like growth can be beautiful, and to allow it to happen. You know, it happens in so many different ways, like every single day. Yeah, and I really appreciated it. For me, such a big part of healing is connecting with our ancestry. There's this idea of hungry ghosts in Chinese culture, meaning like a really small mouth and a big body, so they can never be full. And often I think of this as a country of hungry ghosts, because so many of us are cut off from our ancestry. And I feel like our ancestry is like roots, like where we get so much of the goodness. Because in every ancestral tradition, there's wisdom, and there's culture, and there's food, and there's connection. And for a variety of reasons, like the genocide of the indigenous peoples, slavery, immigration, you know, what happened with colonization, it can be really painful for all of us to connect with our ancestry. And yet there's that really deep longing to belong to something deeper than just, you know, what's here. And so, yeah, really, really appreciating what all of you guys heard from the earth, and that last point you're saying about, I feel like the earth is so generous, right? We're always harming her, just like, and I think of this as earth, as I was saying in our meditation, like there are ways in which I'm always harming my body, right? And the body never gives up on us, right? The body's pumping blood, working the heart, doing the livers, doing the like it never gives up. And so, yeah, I feel like the lessons that I've gotten from just this very simple act of humbling myself and listening have been the most profound, you know, than any writer or anything. That just like there's so much wisdom in the earth, I believe that each of us has so much wisdom within ourselves, within our hearts and our bodies, and within our traditions. And yeah, it's a real privilege and honor to access some of that in our lifetime. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Trent. Thank you, John, for being a part of this guided meditation. I hope you guys took something out of it. So welcome back. We just had a really good intro, a little emotional for me. I'll speak for myself, but we really did get into just our ancestral heritage, and Vickie kind of already answered a lot of the questions that I had from the beginning. So one thing that I did want to touch on is that she is a psychologist, and so she does this with her patients. Do you do this pretty often sometimes? Yeah, she does this with her patients. And so one of my questions for her is like, do you genuinely think that we're stuck in this capitalistic matrix, and that is why a lot of our problems or we seek extra help, we seek therapy, we seek a sense of belonging, because we're just stuck in this matrix where we have to rely on the government or rely on the powers that be, or the 1%ers if you must?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I don't think of it as just capitalism, but as the entire system of oppression that we live under. You know, we're just talking about how this is a country that's founded on genocide and slavery, and, you know, the abuse of immigrants. And like any relationship, the way it starts has a lot to do with how it plays out. You know, you'll notice this in our daily lives, like with a coworker. If you guys start in a hostile, acrimonious way, that starts to come out. And similarly with this country, until we atone for that in a variety of ways, including reparations, including land back, it's a poison. And that poison is in all of us, to varying degrees in different ways, depending on the identities that we hold. And so this is like the lens with which I see a lot of what's happening. So if a client of mine is saying, like, it's hard for me to speak up for myself at work, it's not her problem. You know, it's so rooted in the culture that you grew up in. You know, I come from a culture, Chinese culture, that is like over 4,000 years of patriarchy, of silencing women. And it has to do with that. It has to do with what happens around immigration. It has to do with the patriarchy in this country. You know, there's so many layers of how we get conditioned to do what we do. And so I really see the work of healing as bringing consciousness to those layers. In a variety of ways, with the kind of awareness practice we do through, you know, it's called meditation, but every culture has practices to bring awareness to the narratives and the habits that are oppressing us and keeping us from liberation.
Right on. We also talk about climate change and how climate change is kind of inevitable right now. And so Vickie believes that we truly cannot heal just ourselves until we really tend to Mother Nature and connect, and which is something that we practice in the beginning. So do you feel like, am I right? Is that what
Yeah.
you feel? Okay. So what is something that we as everyday consumers can kind of practice or change to where it could help us be better and heal better?
Yeah. I mean, I love this quote by this Brazilian artist Mundano, and the whole Resistência Indígena out of Brazil, that says, we are not defending nature, we are nature defending ourselves. And I think that really points to what I believe, that this is Earth. You know, this is the land that I'm stewarding in this lifetime. And so I don't see the climate crisis and, you know, the death of 1/3 of the species, like what's happening in terms of flooding and fires, and of course disproportionately impacting those who, the global south, who live below the equator, those who are less resourced, those who really, it's not their fault what's happening. It's the fault of countries like the US, and within the US, the ones with the most wealth. I see all of that as really intricately tied to our own healing. You know, my experience is like, the more we heal, the more we seek liberation for everyone, because we live interdependence, knowing that, you know, others' freedom is connected to our freedom. And so, you know, I think there are individual changes that we can make. Like, for instance, like not eating beef is one of the most impactful individual changes you can make. I think that the climate crisis, like most things going on, it's best faced in community. I think there's a lot of grief. I think there's a lot of terror. And I really encourage people to find, there's so many groups right now where people are talking about this and talking about acts of civil disobedience or other ways to support what's happening. And so I think getting connected to a group that also shares these concerns in a place where you can express your feelings can be really impactful.
Absolutely. And I can absolutely relate to that. I always say that I started my podcast and my journalism journey because I am from Vallejo myself, and we were just plagued with like the lack of resources and crime and just the bad press and the corruption within the police and the system going on. And so by the time I was really aware of this, it was just like, okay, there were barely any resources for us. So how can we advocate for the younger generation? And so it was a lot of people who I went to high school with, the middle school with, who were starting their own businesses and trying to start podcasts and really come together and work as a unit so that we can put out something more positive. And so everything that I do moving forward has been all about bringing people together and connecting people and just putting out positivity and supporting, you know, mom and pop shops and small businesses and stuff. And it's landed me, you know, here today. So everything that you do just kind of leads up to wherever you're gonna go, if that makes sense. But that it's just been the most healing for me because all of my biological family is not in California. So I always try to create family and communities in any territory that I'm in. And it's been very, very healing because then I would feel lonely. I would feel some type of isolation, like, man, none of my bloodline is here, you know? So that's how I relate. I appreciate it. So Vickie has been very well traveled. She did a spiritual pilgrimage and which took her to Montana first, and then it extended to Taiwan as well, and various other places. And so when we all kind of joke around and say, like, I would love to just live off the grid. I would love to just pick up and backpack and go somewhere and just leave everything behind. And you, in a sense, did that. You said you kind of disconnected from your family. You worked on a horse ranch in Montana. It's a great start. I was going to move to Idaho and I was going to work on a zip lining place. And I was like, can I work here? They were like, yeah, we would love to have you. And I was like, this is where I'm going to start my new life. But anyway, so what would you say to people who feel like they don't necessarily have that luxury or that courage to be able to just kind of pick up and go and start something new?
Yeah, it definitely is a luxury. Yeah. And I'm not sure if I feel equipped to tell people,
no worries,
what to do if that's not, like, there's so many reasons why that can't happen, because you're caring for family, because you have a family yourself, because of financial reasons, because of health reasons.
Absolutely.
Like, there's a million reasons why that's not accessible. I guess what I'm thinking of as you're saying that is, like, that experience, like, one of the places I went was Taiwan, where my uncle who died some years ago was connected with a monastery, and being there connected me with my ancestral and spiritual lineage in a way that felt really life-changing. But I really had to come back here to do a lot of what we call in psychology the shadow work or the ego work of facing my own demons. And there's nowhere you can run that doesn't follow you. And actually that work is best done in normal life, meaning like living somewhere steady, like being in relationship, being with your family or friends or partner, or being in community, or working somewhere steady, because these are patterns that are in us. You know, systemic oppression isn't something that's outside of us or that belongs only to, you know, someone you think is the bad guy. They are things that each of us is acting out against ourselves, unfortunately against the people we love most. And to really have the opportunity to change and bring awareness to that, which I think brings incredible liberation, is kind of the day-to-day slog of parenting. Yeah, of taking care of our bodies even when we don't feel like it, you know, of tending to our relationships even when it's a pain in the ass. And honestly, working with a lot of the shame that comes up when we harm the people we love. And so I think it's like, I guess, romantic, everyone thinks, to like go off and, you know, do something crazy. Right. And then at some point, you have to come back into life. And I feel like that's where the real work begins. And so they're both important. And just wanting to affirm that each person's journey looks so different. And yeah, just wanting to celebrate that.
Right on. I can definitely relate to that as well, because my lack of discipline follows me in every avenue of my life. And so I can just say, I'm going to start a new job, or I'm going to move somewhere else. It's always going to follow me, and it always plays out the same way. And so it's just like, no, Brianna, work on your discipline and you will be fine. It's just always going to go everywhere with you. So I really appreciate you bringing that up as well. And just, we are in the Bay Area. So I remember you mentioned on another podcast that you did You did something in Marin. Is it Buddhist rock, if I'm not mistaken? What is Buddhist rock?
Well, let me say on the topic of discipline, once someone said to me, the best discipline is love.
Yes.
And I love that. Like, I got a kitty last year and he changed my life. And I really want to love everyone like I love my kitty who can do no wrong. You know, and it's not like me, like I feel like the Puritan work ethic in this country, including around change and self-improvement, can be so damaging, where we're trying to shame and criticize ourselves into being better people. Rather than with my kitty, I'm always like, I love you, Bubba. I love you. You're the best kitty. And you know, like how to give that to ourselves and not to be, you know, to continue the parent analogy, not to say, oh, let your kid just like stay up all night and watch movies and eat candy because whatever you want. Not like that. There has to be like structure. But, you know, there's a way for a parent to do it that's kind and loving. And we're really all trying to find that balance with ourselves. How do we meet ourselves in the darkest places with like sweetness rather than like, I suck at this. I'm always going to suck at this. Like, what's wrong with me? You know, and so just wanted to offer that around discipline, that I think that word, I think I like to think of it as like softening with love. So yeah, my spiritual journey started with mindfulness meditation, because I'm a psychologist, and that's a kind of meditation that Jon Kabat-Zinn started. And then I spent a number of years at Spirit Rock, which is a Western Buddhist meditation center up in Marin. But I would say that I didn't really understand interdependence, which I think is one of the core tenets of spirituality, until I left this country to study in Taiwan and to live for a period of time in a small pilgrimage town in India called Tiruvannamalai, where I really experienced the kindness of the people. And I also would say the dignity of this idea that living like you know you're of noble birth, a son or daughter of Shiva, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. And just being in those cultures really changed me. And when I came back, I feel like my spiritual community now are activists, are people who are deeply committed to the liberation of our communities and our nation. And to me, that's spiritual practice. Like a friend of mine says being honest about climate change right now is spiritual practice, Chris Moore-Backman. And so, you know, I think to me, spiritual practice is really about service and about an honoring of our interconnectedness and the divine as part of that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Vickie, before we wrap up this episode, is there any lasting things you want to tell us, leave us with, let us know where we can find you or how anybody can get in contact with you and be of service to you? Is there anything you want to leave us with?
My website is Vickie Chang.
Put it here.
Okay.
Edits.
Okay, phd.com. And yeah, I love working with couples and families and individuals. I teach wellness classes and just really I think this is a hard time, and I think hard times also have a lot of potential for transformation. It's a time where in psychology we say they're cascading traumas, meaning one after the other without a chance to recover from them. And I believe that's going to continue for some period of time. And yeah, just really wanting people to turn towards the possibility in this moment. You know, in times of chaos and difficulty, there's also a great opportunity for transforming yourself and for dreaming things you never thought possible. And yeah, that's definitely my wish for the listeners.
And stay hopeful and keep dreaming. This has been another episode of Connected, and thank you guys for watching and following along, and we will see you later. Bye.
Thank you.